Okay, 6:15. Let's go ahead and get things started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Scott Fincher. I'm the Data Science Community Manager here at KNIME. We have some folks here in the room with us live. They came and to enjoy the pizza, a little bit of beer, pick up some goodies, but I know a bunch of you are online with us as well, so welcome to you too. To start out tonight, I wanted to give a brief introduction to KNIME Analytics Platform for those of you who have never seen it before, or maybe you've downloaded it and weren't sure where to start. We'll just give a brief intro of some of the nomenclature so that everybody understands what I mean when I say certain words, and I'll build a sample workflow for you to just kind of show you how the process works. That'll be in 20, 25 minutes or so. Then Satoru, my colleague, is going to come on and talk to you a little bit about the basics of LLMs, some more terminology, some more, how things work. We'll talk about retrieval augmented generation and how we can do that in KNIME without actually writing any code. Hey, come on in. New joiners coming in. So we'll do that. And then after the presentation, our online folks will sign off. And then here in the group with people who've showed up, we're going to spend some time working on an exercise together. You guys online will have the ability to download that and try that out yourself. And then if you have any questions about it, you can always check up with us on the forum or reach out to us in other ways if you need help getting that to work. But it's pretty straightforward. So having said that, let me go ahead and jump in with a little bit of intro to KNIME. So you may ask, what is KNIME Analytics Platform? It's a tool to make sense of your data. And really the thing about it is it's open source, it's free to download, and we use a visual paradigm. So there's no coding required to do the stuff we're going to talk about today, unless you want to. If you do want to, then we have nodes that will help you do that. So we can integrate with things like R and Python and Java, no problem. But the idea is you don't have to do that if you don't want to. And what can we do? We can do everything in the entire data science pipeline, loading in data, cleaning it up, generating visualizations and reports, training, testing, and validating models. That's all stuff we can do. And getting into the LLM stuff tonight, you'll actually see how we can access some external resources to get the processing done that we need. So a little bit of nomenclature here before we start. If you're new to KNIME, what's a node? So a node is one of these little colored boxes. A node has some input and some output that will depend on what the node is actually doing. You have a status bar, or what we call the traffic light underneath, that will be either red, yellow, or green according to whether it's been configured, executed, or not configured. And if you're really unfortunate and you have the little red X on the bottom, something has gone wrong and you need to figure out what that is. But at a glance, you can see what each of your nodes is doing and what the status of it is. And we take all of these nodes together and we combine them in sequence to build what's called a workflow. So what you see here on the bottom of the screen is a little workflow that reads in some CSV data. It does some simple filtering, and then it builds a couple of visualizations. And you can see there's a color coding here too as well. For example, the orange nodes are our reader nodes. The yellow nodes are for transforming or filtering or doing things to data. The blue nodes are about generating visualizations. We have other colors in there as well. Red is for writing, green is for training models, and so on and so forth. But just another way for you to look at your data and get a feel for what's going on. I will say that today, KNIME software handles the entire data science lifecycle, which you see on this screen. We're pretty much just going to be talking about the KNIME Analytics Platform today, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. That is what we're going to use to be able to blend our data, clean it up, actually build models and visualizations. That's one thing that we do. That's our free open source software. A lot of times people ask, well, how do you keep the lights on if you give your software away? We do have enterprise software, which is on the right-hand side of this screen, which is about deploying your models, validating them, making sure that we can monitor and update them properly. Is there model drift? Do we need to retrain? Automation, scheduling, all that stuff is supported on our commercial side. So just so you know, that's out there and it's available, but everything we're going to be dealing with today is in the analytics platform. So there's over 4,000 nodes included in KNIME, which can sound like a really large number. I want to emphasize that you don't need to know about 4,000 nodes to be able to do your work, right? You can probably get away with your first few workflows and only know about 15 or 20 different nodes, maybe not even that much. So as you learn KNIME over time and you expand into doing different types of analyses, you'll gradually be exposed to more and more nodes, and it's kind of a natural process. But these nodes cover all sorts of things from, I know this diagram is a little bit of an eye test. But the orange nodes on the right-hand side, being able to read in data from different sources, whether that's on your local machine or in the cloud or in a database or something else. The yellow nodes in the middle for data transformation, lots of different data transformation nodes, because there's often a lot of different things we need to do with our data to clean it up and make it useful. The green and some of the brown nodes here in the middle, again, about training, testing, and validating models, all sorts of different algorithms we can bring to bear on the data for different tasks. So maybe it's a clustering analysis, maybe it's classification, maybe it's just simple regression. That's all stuff that we can do, along with some more interesting and sophisticated stuff too. Blue visualization nodes, which I'll show you several of here in the demo here in a moment. And then our deployment nodes. So how do I get my data or my analysis out of KNIME once I'm finished with it? Maybe I want to write back to a database or send it to some different program entirely, like Power BI or Tableau for visualization. Maybe I want to deploy my model somewhere remotely. That's all stuff that we can do too. So without going into any further detail on that, if you haven't ever installed KNIME before, it's really easy. Just go to knime.com/downloads, or you can go to the main knime.com page and click the big yellow button and select the version you want. So we support Mac, Windows, and Linux. You can see a picture of the download page here. Just grab the one you want and go ahead and install. It's pretty straightforward. If the folks that are here with us today will be actually using KNIME here shortly to build workflows together. But hopefully you'll be able to try that with us at home. I have some slides here about a tour of the user interface, but instead of going through slides to give you a tour, it's much more interesting to give you a tour. So I'm going to do that now. So let's go ahead and do a demo while we tour the interface. So this is KNIME Analytics Platform. The version I have is 5.2.2. That's the latest version. If you have anything older already installed that's prior to version 5, it's not going to look like this. We have a major UI upgrade that we did starting with version 5. So that's what we're going to be using here today. So when I open up KNIME, this is what I see. I get my welcome page here, which has some examples for me to start with. And this is maybe a good place if you've never seen KNIME before, would be to click on one of these examples. I can make this a little bigger here. And you can see, okay, there's a bunch of nodes over here. This workflow is about combining and cleaning spreadsheet data. So I can start to explore some of these nodes with this example. I can see the annotations that describe to me what's going on. But instead of showing you a pre-built workflow, because you can look at that on your own, I thought maybe I would try building one for you from scratch using a movie data set that one of my colleagues found for me that it has over 1 million movies in it that have been generated since, I guess, the 30s, something like that, all organized by what country they were produced in, what their ratings were, what their revenue was, all this sort of stuff. So I thought we could look at that data set together today and see what kind of workflow we could build with it. So if I want to start building a workflow from scratch, I can scroll down here. I can click the plus button to create a workflow in my local space, and it'll ask me what I want to call it. I'll just give it, some name, movie workflow, right? I can press create, and then I get my my start page. So on the left-hand side, I have what's called the node repository. This is where all the different nodes live. I can drag and drop them into my workflow area, which is suggested here in the middle. There's also this node monitor at the bottom, which is where we're going to start to see data once we begin to process things. And I'll go through some of these other features on the left-hand side here in a moment. But I mentioned we have some movie data. So let me, oops, my slides are blocking what I want to get to here. So I have some data on my desktop that I'm going to go grab in this folder. So I have a CSV file. It's about 500 megabytes, right? I'm just going to take it, drag it, and drop it straight into KNIME. And you can see what KNIME has done here. I'll make this bigger again. Is it's created a CSV reader node for me because it knows it's a CSV file. So it's created the node that I need without me even having to go find it. If I want to adjust how the CSV reader works, I can just double click on it. And that's going to bring up for me a configuration dialog. So this configuration dialog points to where the file actually lives on my system. It gives me some options about how I need to read in the file. And it gives me a preview of the first 10,000 rows. So I can start to see like, okay, there's an integer called ID. There's a string with the title of the movie. There's, a double that corresponds to the revenue. So I can look at this and go, okay, this is what I want to do. This configuration looks correct. So I can just back out. And then I'm going to do something called executing the node. So if I mouse over and click the little arrow here, this is going to take a moment to read in the entire file. And you can see when it's done that, I get the green light. And I can go down here to the node monitor and see my data, 910,000 rows, roughly 25 columns. I can see the data itself. I can also get statistics on the data. So if I wanted to see, you know, what's the average or the minimum, the maximum of some of my numeric fields, this is actually taking a little bit because this is quite a big file for it to calculate the statistics on. So I'm going to not do that for the moment. But I've read in my data. So let's say I can see through here that I've got some, you know, all these different fields. Let's say maybe I'm just interested in US movies for the time being, movies that were produced in the United States. So what I could do is I could go find something called a row filter node in the node repository, but maybe an easier thing to do would be to take this output port and drag it into empty space, and it gives me some suggestions about what I should use. And what do you know? There's a row filter. So I can just click on that and add it. Now, if I want to configure the row filter to match movies that match United States, I'm going to put United States with a star as a wildcard, and we're going to match the production country, okay? So by default, if I execute that node, it's going to think for a minute, filter out that data, and return just the United States countries. Let's see, what did I want to do next? Yes, I want to filter based on release date once it's finished here. So we've gone from 900,000 records roughly to 135,000 records for all these movies, right? Just by doing that. Now, sometimes in KNIME, especially when you're starting out, one of the things that you want to, you know what it is you want to do, but you don't know the node that does that thing, right? It's pretty natural because there's a whole bunch of nodes, as I mentioned before. So what we can do is we can go over to the left-hand side and we can use the KNIME AI assistant, or we call it KAI, K-A-I. Oh, it's going to make me log in. There we go. To log in, all you have to do is just have a free account on our website. You don't have to really do anything else. And so it's asking me, what do I want to know? So I can ask it general questions about KNIME workflows. I can also switch it over to this build option and have it try to build workflows for me. So I have some notes here about what I was going to do. Let's say that I want to filter the records based on a particular release date such that we only get movies in the, I don't know, pick a decade. The 90s? Sure, we'll just get 90s movies. So let's ask Kai to do that. We can say, filter the records based on, and sorry, forgive me while I move Zoom stuff around, you guys. Maybe I'll put it at the top. It'll be less obtrusive. Based on, and we're going to say release underscore date, which is the actual field in our data set, including, you ever have that problem when you try and type in front of people that you can't type correctly? Including only rows in the decade of the 1990s. Okay. So I'm going to ask Kai to do that for me, and it's going to think for a second. And because it's in build mode, what it has done is added a row filter node with the proper range checking on this particular string. So it's actually gone 1990 January 1st all the way through December 31st of 1999. And for whatever reason, this time it didn't add a description. Usually it actually would add this description for you that I could add just right now to point out that this is filtering on the 1990s decade. This is actually a really good thing to do. It's like, it's analogous if you're building a workflow, or if you were writing something in Python, right? You would include comments in your code. Well, when you're doing this, include comments under your nodes so you can remember what you were doing. So I can execute this, and now we have movies that were produced in the US only from the 1990s. Now, let's say, what if, I'm going to switch over to the Kai Q&A mode. What if I only was interested in the top 10 records from this data set based on revenue? What were the massive hits of the 1990s, right? So I'm going to ask Kai, what node can I use to get the top 10 records based on revenue? And so it's in Q&A mode, so it's not going to build it out for me, but it's going to look at all these different resources and say, you can use the top K row filter node in KNIME to get the top 10 records based on revenue. Thank you, Kai. So I could actually take and drag and drop this into my workflow, connect it together, and then go in and configure it. In this case, the top K row filter, I said I want the number of rows to be 10, and I would like to sort descending, I think, based on the revenue. So this didn't auto configure it for me like the build mode did. It just answered my question, right? So now if I execute that node and look, I can see, all right, I have a data set with 10 records in it, and it's got the titles in it that you might expect from the 1990s. What are the big hitters? Titanic, Jurassic Park, The Lion King, Men in Black, and so on and so forth. Well, what say now? I mean, looking at tables is great, whatever, but it's probably better to have a visualization. So we could actually, we could build a visualization here. And what did I say I wanted to do? Let's make a pie chart. Not everybody loves pie charts, but for the purposes of our exercise here, that's what we'll do. We'll do something more interesting here in a minute. The first thing I'm going to do is actually use something called a color manager, because I'm going to build several different visualizations all together. And I want them to have a consistent color scheme. So I can use the color manager on not the music composer, but let's say on the titles. And it will just assign a color that will be consistent for each title going forward. Okay, then I can go over here and find the pie chart. Here it is. And say, hey, let's, what's the breakdown based on revenue? So this configuration looks a little bit different because I can actually get a preview of the thing that it is that I'm interested in before I actually execute the node. So our category dimension is going to be the title. And what do we care about for frequency? We care about the revenue. Give me the sum. And then it gives some other stuff about what we want to call our chart and so forth. But it's just a pie chart, right? So there it is at a glance, and we can mouse over and see what these values are. And by far, Titanic generated 25%, of the top 10 movies in the 1990s, and you can kind of see how the rest of them fall off. Okay, well, that's all well and good. I got a pie chart. It's pretty easy. Let me see how we're doing on time. So good. I have some extra time, so I'm going to show you guys some extra nodes here and combine them into what's called a data app. So we can essentially build a dashboard using these views that are interactive between one another. And that also allows us to do some custom reporting if we need to in the end. So let's add some other visualizations here. Maybe one thing that we would be interested in would be the profitability of these movies, right? So not just the revenue, but also take into account how much money was spent on them relative to how much they made, right? So we could do something, and I'm going to scroll over here for a second. Let's calculate this thing we're calling profitability. We can do that with something called the math formula node. I'm going to drag that in here. And I will just say I'm going to create something called profitability. This is a metric that I'm making up because I'm not in finance, but I would like to know what is the revenue divided by, the budget. And the way I'm building this, I should back up. In this expression, I could just type it in if I want to, but it's actually easier for me to double click over here. So I can double click and say revenue divided by budget, and it puts the little dollar signs around it to indicate this is one of the fields in my data set, right? So revenue divided by budget is a new field called profitability. And then maybe what I could do is make a bar chart of that profitability. So let's do this over here because I keep forgetting to do it. We don't have to use the node repository all the time. For a bar chart, I'm going to say, give me for each title, show me what this new variable profitability is. Just show it to me. And that isn't going to be sorted in order, but we can already see at a glance, like, even though Titanic was the big money maker, it's not the most profitable in terms of the ratio, right? So for every, $1 spent on production of Titanic, it returned $11, which is great. I mean, I, wish my stock portfolio would do that well, but there were others that were even better. The Sixth Sense produced $16 or almost $17 for every dollar spent on its production, right? So much less grossing movies, but the people who invested on them are really happy, right? So we could see that at a glance with our bar chart that we just made. Maybe if I wanted to see this relationship in a different way, I could use a scatter plot. And I'm using all these different views on purpose. I'll show you here in a moment why. Whoops. So then we could, let's say, build a scatter plot to compare what did I say I wanted to do before? The revenue on the x-axis and the budget on the y-axis, right? So I can go down here and say, oh, that's for labels, but revenue and budget. And then I would want to, My mouse wheel is being super annoying. Sorry about that. And then I could also get down here and, if I generate plots, let's label our axes, or else our stats 201 professors will be mad at us. Budget. Okay. And then what do we see here? So this just gives us a different way to look at this data, right? Here's Titanic. This is our obvious outlier in terms of both revenue and budget. But if we look over here, if we have, small budget, but, more revenue, so this guy right here is probably, I forget which movie we said, Armageddon, one of the ones that actually had a pretty good return relative to what was put into it. So that's another way we could kind of get at the same idea, right? Okay. And we could even go further. I'll just put one more view in here. It's almost not really a view. It's just a tabular view of the data, so that we could display this alongside our other data if we want to. Okay, now this gets to the part that I really wanted to be able to show you, which is to do something called creating a data app. So what I can do is I can take all of these blue nodes essentially and draw a box around them. I'm going to right click and collapse them into something called a component. So this is my, I'll call this my movie viz component, very fancy. Why do I want to do this? Well, for two reasons. One, this helps kind of abstract the complexity away, right? If I'm showing this workflow to my boss, maybe he doesn't need to see all the different nodes that are involved with the visualizations. He just cares about seeing the dashboard. Well, the component helps me abstract that away. But also components are required for us to build data apps. So now that I've put all this stuff in here, I can execute the component and I can open its combined view. And what do I see? I see the pie chart at the top. I see the bar chart underneath. This is all by default. The scatter plot and this tabular view of my data. Now that's all well and good, but it's actually a little hard for me to consume that way. So I'm going to go inside my component, which I can do by going in and going into open component that I just built. And I can see here's all my nodes, right, that I just added. There's something called the layout editor here in the top left. So if I click on the open the layout editor, then it's actually going to say, and I'm going to clear it, maybe instead of top to bottom, I'd like to have this kind of like a 4x4 layout, right? So I'm going to drag in a couple of column splitters here, and then I'll drag in my information. So I'll put my pie chart and table view next to each other, because maybe those are the things most people care about. And then we have these kind of ancillary visualizations at the bottom. So I'll just drag and drop them like that. If I wanted to, change their size relative to one another, I could do that too, just by dragging things around. But for the time being, I'll just do this. Click finish, and I'll go back outside my component. Now, when I execute and open the view again, oh, nice. This is a little more digestible. And if I make it even smaller, like maybe that's fine. Now, one of the cool things about this component, apart from it just being all combined here together where I can see it at once, is there's interactivity. So if I click on Titanic in the pie chart, then Titanic is also highlighted in the bar chart, and we can also see it in the scatter plot here, right? So this allows us to get a different view. And in the table view, I should actually scroll down and look in the table. Here it is. And if we wanted to look at some of the other aspects of the Titanic movie that we're not highlighting in our other charts, then we can see, what its review scores are, what the actual overview of it was, the tagline, what genre it is, all these other things that were in our original data set we weren't actually using, right? Just additional detail is available to us here. And I can even select multiple movies if I want to, right? By control clicking on them, and then those are highlighted and so on and so forth. So you get the idea. But I wanted to show you what we could do to build a data app. Now, this is a super simple data app. I built this in 15 minutes, right? We can have other interactivity where you can actually have users enter data, to control the filtering manually. You have all sorts of drop downs and text entry refresh options that you can have. So data apps are a very powerful way to make your KNIME workflows accessible to people who may not have access to KNIME at all. Because if I had our commercial product, I could actually put this on our business hub and display it via a web browser. So somebody could interact with this visualization or whatever it is that I built without knowing anything about KNIME at all, and just getting the information that they need out of the data app, right? It's a way for us to put guardrails as data scientists or data analysts around what we want other people to do with our data. So I will stop there, just having given you a little bit of taste of what's possible. I will say too, one other thing that's important to do, just good hygiene, right? is add annotations in here. I didn't do this before, but I should have. I can draw a little box and say, these are my processing nodes around whatever it is that's in my workflow. Again, and I can make this bold, I could make it a different color, whatever, to highlight the things that are interesting or useful for other people that may come behind me who have to use this workflow. Or for myself in 6 months when I have to pull this up again and I don't remember what any of it does, which is invariably something that happens, right? Okay, so I will stop here and I'm going to hand it over to Satoru. We're going to get out of the intro to KNIME stuff and he's going to get into LLMs and we'll really start getting into the nitty-gritty together.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to today's webinar or Learnathon in person or online. My name is Satoru Hayasaka. I'm one of the data scientists located here in Austin, Texas. And so I'm going to give you a brief background or introduction to the actual Learnathon part of what you're going to be doing, kind of introduction to the workflow that you're going to be building today. So here is an introduction to KNIME AI Extension. So we have all these number of tools, number of nodes that are available to connect to LLM or large language models. And you are able to connect with two online LLMs. One is OpenAI, which is a commercial LLM, and the other one is Hugging Face, which is freely available LLM online. And also there is a LLM called GPT for All. You can just download it to your computer and you can just run it off of your computer as opposed to accessing through online. And so these are different kind of nodes that are available as part of the AI extension. And by combining these nodes, you'll be able to create an app such as Chatbot, and you'll be able to deploy the app that you created on the Business Hub, for example, and you'll be able to create a chatbot, as you can see. So example of that chatbot is right here, as you can see. So so you may have heard of LLMs and chatbot and all that kind of things, ChatGPT. And one thing that I want to point out here is that, sorry, I need to move this one down here. One thing I want to point out here is that so LLMs are smart, but they do not know everything. And so example of this is, let's see. So here's an example of this. You ask a question to ChatGPT, who today is the president of the United States? And the answer you'll get from ChatGPT is that I'm sorry, but I don't have access to real-time information as my knowledge only goes up until September of 2021. So in other words, ChatGPT is telling me that I don't really have up-to-date information. You should just search it yourself. And here's another question. What is the KNIME AI Learnathon? And the answer you get is, as my last knowledge update is September 2021, et cetera. And so it can't really give us an answer as to what the KNIME AI Learnathon is, but it tries to give me an answer saying that, maybe I can explain about KNIME or Learnathon, et cetera. So anyway, so Chat LLM doesn't really have all the answers in this case. So, but that doesn't really. So things don't have to be this way. We are able to modify it. We'll be able to use LLM in a way that we will be able to introduce some of the knowledge base that we have, and we can just use LLM or AI chatbot to extend the knowledge base that we have. So here in this case, the knowledge base you see on the left is this is a website for this event. So Learnathon event, you may have seen this if you registered in this event. So this is a website from meetup.com, and so it has a description of the event, today's event, and what Learnathon is, and who the speakers are, and et cetera. And on the right hand side is the chatbot armed with the knowledge provided by this knowledge base, which is the event web page. And as you can see, so you'll be able to see in this chatbot on the right. So I asked the question, what is the Learnathon? And so the chatbot is now thinking, and will be able to give an answer, a more coherent answer than the one that you saw in the previous slide. A Learnathon event, et cetera, and give you more precise information about the AI Learnathon that we are hosting. And also, I can ask who will be presenting at this Learnathon, and you will be able to give an answer as to who the presenters are, and so on and so forth. And so what's happening here is basically we are modifying this Learnathon, modifying this chatbot, and so we were able to incorporate the knowledge base that we have, so that so 2 slides ago we indicated that LLM doesn't know everything, but you can basically combine the knowledge base that you have with the LLM, so that you'll be able to leverage the LLM to perform more than it knows. And so there are 4 different levels of customization available as part of LLM, and you'll be able to do this using KNIME. And the first layer is prompt engineering. The second layer is hyperparameter tuning. The third layer is retrieval augmented generation. And the last layer is conversational retrieval agents. So let me start out with the first layer. So prompt engineering is essentially string manipulation. And so you try to come up with a prompt to ask LLM with basically clever wording of the prompt to use. And we're gonna have an example of this later on in my presentation. Then hyperparameter tuning, so you'll be able to adjust the parameter on LLM so that you'll be able to get some responses that you'd like. So in this case, you'll be able to select the model that you're using, and also some other model parameters as well. So there's the temperature parameter. So it adjusts the type of response that you get from LLM. So the temperature is higher, so that means the answer tends to be more random and spontaneous. So you might so if you raise the temperature, you may be getting different answers. Even though if you ask the same question over and over, you might be getting different answers. But if you lower the temperature, LM becomes more deterministic. And the chances that you'll be getting very similar answer every time you ask the same question. So in our example, we're going to be using temperature 0.2 in this case. And the maximum response length is, so basically this is a number of tokens or the words that are represented in a chat. And so if you want to get, if you're expecting a long response, then you need to increase the maximum response length to accommodate a long answer as well. And the third layer is retrieval augmented generation. So this process provides more text data with a specific knowledge, terminology, context, or up-to-date information. Now, what do I mean by that? So we're going to use something known as vector store. And so what is a vector store? So let's say your company has a knowledge base. So it has all these documentations, documents, as well as social media posting, emails, discussion posts, and so on and so forth. You have this collection of knowledge in your company, and you transform this or embed this information into a space known as vector store. So, so this is basically a numerical representation of all the sentences or documents in a higher dimensional space. And so this process is known as embedding. How this embedding works is that it works in a way that semantically similar sentences or documents are transformed in a similar space in a vector space. So you'll be able to retrieve information that are related to each other fairly easily. So in this particular case, so for example, there is this website that describes a AI Learnathon. And so this information is transformed to the vector space with this coordinate. And someone asks a question about AI Learnathon. So the user asks the prompt AI Learnathon. And what you're going to do is you try to embed this prompt in a vector store using this embedding. So it's going to be mapped into a similar vector space in a vector store. And so you'll be able to, by searching the spatial proximity in the vector space, you'll be able to retrieve the document that is relevant, most relevant to the prompt that is asked in this case. So you're able to extract the information regarding AI Learnathon in this case. So here's another example of this. So you might ask a question, how to temp the ground coffee? So this one is a question related to the exercise that you'll be doing. So this is related to the coffee machine that we have in our Berlin office. And so we embed this, we transform this question into the vector store. So the vector store in this case contains the knowledge base of coffee machine manual that we have in the Berlin office. And by doing the proximity search of the vector store, we'll be able to retrieve most similar information from the knowledge base. So these are 5 most similar sentences related to this question. And so you'll be able to see these collection of similar documents contain some information about the question. And then the last step is prompt engineering. So what's happening here is that when you ask a question, you just don't ask the question that you want to ask, but you also you basically engineer a prompt in a way that so it starts out with in this top part. Basically, I'm gonna ask you a question, and I'm gonna provide you with this additional information that I just retrieved from vector space, vector store, and based on this information, please answer the following question. Then at the end of this prompt, you'll be able to see that I'm asking a question: how do you temp the ground coffee? So basically, this is an example of prompt engineering that is done as part of LLM in this case. So the last layer of LLM customization is much more sophisticated model than this. So there's a little bit of so I'm going to just give you an overview picture of this last layer, conversational retrieval agent. So it enhances LLM with the ability to chat and use tools to answer specific questions. So in a previous layer, so we have to do this vector store search, try to figure out what documents are very similar to the answer that we're looking for, question that we are looking for, and but in this last layer, what we are doing is basically the user asks a question, what is an AI Learnathon? And so what's happening here is that the chatbot has this, in addition to the chatbot, it also contains this knowledge base provided as a tool. So you can see the cylindrical on the right-hand side. And so what's happened next step is how can I find up-to-date information on this topic? So you don't really have to retrieve all these questions, but this chatbot or LLM actually seeks the response from collection of documents in a knowledge base, and you can basically try to find out the search, trying to find the answer in this knowledge base. And once you have the knowledge base, then you try to look for the solution in a knowledge base rather than try to come up with the chatbot trying to come up with the solution on its own. And then you'll be able to search the sentence AI Learnathon in this knowledge base. And then by this process, you'll be able to come up with a response. The AI Learnathon is such and such, and so on and so forth. So the new KNIME AI extension is here. So Scott has did some demonstration as well. So you'll be able to also create your own AI chatbot by combining all these different nodes that are available as part of KNIME Analytics Platform. And that's what you're going to be doing for the remainder of Learnathon today. And so if you're interested in this topic, interested in the topic of how to build AI-generated, AI-powered data apps and using KNIME Analytics Platform or using KNIME, then you'll be able to get some information from webinar that we had last October. And so if you're interested in this topic, I'll refer you to this presentation. But so here's a recap of what we have learned so far. So you can create a custom AI using specialized technique around the LLM API calls, and we can use that can be useful when LLM does not have the correct answer on its own, but you do have the knowledge base that may contain the solution or the answer to the question that you're trying to ask. So you basically will be able to combine your knowledge base with the LLM. And KNIME offers nodes so that you can do this without coding. And you can also customize further and be in control of similarity search and iterations and so on and so forth. And you can build this kind of model. Current framework is flexible to different LLMs, which can be hosted on your local computer as well. So you can just use online LLMs, LLMs that are available online, such as OpenAI or Hugging Face, or you can just download the model itself to your computer, such as GPT-4o, and you can use that as well. So there are different possible use cases of this techniques. So one example is a legal expert chatbot. So the knowledge base that we can provide here is documents, legal documents describing previous court cases, so that the goal is so that the lawyers do not have to browse long documents, a large volume of documents of previous cases to basically get the information they're looking for. And customer care chatbot. So in this case, the knowledge base can be emails and forum activities of previous questions or product documentation that different companies have. And the goal here is to help customers with their technical issues. They'll be able to basically answer the questions using a chatbot. Healthcare expert chatbot. So in this case, the knowledge base would be patients' records, previous clinical results and outcomes, and you'll be able to basically build a knowledge base about that. And so doctors can quickly find the similar cases and what kind of treatment have been done in the past. And the last one is machine expert chatbot. So the knowledge base is latest up-to-date information of the manual book describing the components and practices of a certain product or services. And the goal here is to help end users retrieve information related to the product that they want to use. And so that's going to be the use case that we have for today's Learnathon. So for today's Learnathon, so we're going to be creating a custom chatbot to get information on this coffee machine that we have in our Berlin office. So this machine, Barista Express. So apparently this machine is very, very complicated. And so it comes with a really long manual of instructions on how to use it. So the goal here is we want to create a chatbot that enables you to give an answer as to, like if you have a question about how to use this machine, if you have a particular question, then rather than looking at the manual, you'll be able to get the information through the chatbot. So for example, this is a contrast between two different approaches. So you can just look at the manual on the right-hand side and look for the term that you're looking for, and you can just read the manual, or on the left-hand side, you can just create a chatbot and ask a question about milk jug, and it's going to give you an answer related to that. So that's going to be more concise and the kind of information that you might be looking for in this case. And so you have this chatbot, and so there are different steps to build this chatbot. So the first step is to create a knowledge base. So basically import the PDF version of the manual, create a vector store, and so basically to create a knowledge base to be used later on. And in the second step, we're going to be using an LM for a completion task. So we're going to be going through a spreadsheet filled with different questions, and you try to come up with a question, try to come up with try to do some prompt engineering so that you'll be able to come up with answer to that question. And the last step is going to be building an actual chatbot to do as a data app. So you'll be able to create a data app. So you'll be able to interactively typing a question, and the chatbot will answer, respond to your question, and so on and so forth. And so we're not gonna really go into this optional part today. And so the first step is in the workflow. So you'll be able to get the download, you'll be able to download the workflow later on and get started with this exercise. All the instructions are available as part of the annotation for the exercise workflow. So you'll be able to follow the instructions. So I'm going to just give you a general gist of what's going to be happening in this first step of this exercise is to just to import the knowledge base, import the manual book, and also we need to connect to OpenAI for to use an embedding model to create a vector space, and so that's what's going to be happening in step number 8. And the part B of the exercise, what you're going to be doing is so you have a spreadsheet containing a number of questions related to this coffee machine, and so you build you basically use LM prompter node to pull out the you go through the vector store and you retrieve the sentences that may be most relevant to the questions that you are asking. And based on those relevant document or relevant information, you manipulate the prompt, do a little bit of prompt engineering to get the answer. And the last one is the actual building a chatbot. And so in this case, so what's going to be happening here is that you build this vector store, and this vector store can be used as a part of a chatbot known as tool. And so in this case, you don't really have to do that much of a prompt engineering, but you'd be able to build a chatbot that is able to answer your questions interactively. And the last part is deploying data app. So I'm gonna stop that portion here, but so I think this is the end of my portion of the presentation. So if you're joining online, so this is pretty much the end of my presentation. So you'll be able to access the materials, exercise materials through KNIME Community Hub, and just go to KNIME Community Hub, and you can just search for AI Learnathon, or you can just go to this. You can just take a look at this QR code, and that's going to take you to that location on the Community Hub as well. At the bottom of my slide, you'll be able to see the link to the folder that contains today's slide decks. So you'll be able to download today's slide decks as well if you're interested in following these slides later on. And of course, we're going to be posting the recording from today's Learnathon, at least online portion of it, online in a later date. And one last thing I want to do is just to give you a little bit of advertisement for KNIME Spring Summit that will be happening in next month. So it's going to happen in April 15th through 17th in Austin. So it's going to be at the AT&T Conference Center at the UT Austin's campus. And so It's a 3-day conference and you'll be able to attend for all 3 days. The first day is gonna be a bunch of courses, and the remaining 2 days are gonna be filled with seminars, workshops, keynote workshop, and other presentations, and networking opportunities and such. And so if you're interested, please feel free to attend. And also there are some virtual summit pass available. So if you are unable to come to Austin and attend, there are still some of the sessions are going to be broadcasted online as well. So, and I think that is the end of my presentation. And so I guess at this point I can take any questions if there are any questions from the audience online or live.
There's none here that we haven't already answered.
Okay.
So the online folks are okay. We'll give them another second or so to maybe type something in if they have a question. I don't know if they can hear me or not.
Okay.
I put in the chat the link to the tiny URL.
Okay.
So they can get all the information as well as how they can get to hub.nime.com to start working on the workflow, the exercise independently.
Okay, so if you have any, so if any of the online folks, if you have any questions, please type your questions now, because we're going to be finishing up the online portion of the session soon.
Yeah, Andrew asked, is the slide deck on that URL? Yes.
Yes. Yes, the slide decks are going to be available. Well, they are already available at tinyurl.com/learnai Austin. So
Yeah, the intro deck as well as the AI, the
AI deck.
LLM deck
Yeah.
too. Okay, cool. He says, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well, in that case, maybe we can go ahead and sign off.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much for attending, and well,
See you
good luck
next time.
diming. Yeah. See you at the summit, hopefully.